Got unwanted pests in your home or business? Call Get Rid Pest Control at 414-368-0696. State licensed and certified with over 20 years experience, Get Rid Pest Control guarantees their work in the removal of common household pests, including mice, rats, ants, roaches, spiders, centipedes, and bedbugs. Humane trapping and removal of larger pests as well. Unmarked vehicles available upon request. 24-hour emergency service available. Call Get Rid Pest Control today for your free estimate. 414-368-0696. If you got it, we'll get it. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020, the eve of Christmas Eve. Two things specifically I would like to talk about today. Of course, the stimulus package that that Trump has all of a sudden taken an about face 2 days before Christmas. Do you guys know how long it took for Congress to even compromise on this bill? Keeping in mind, all of the Wisconsin Republicans voted against this bill because for some reason they think that $600 is too much. I have an idea of what I think should be, because otherwise we're going to force Congress, some of who just got elected in November, right? So Republicans were elected. In fact, the Republicans gained seats in the House. So Republicans that gained seats in the House of Representatives that are still trying to say the election was fake and fraudulent, even though they won, those Republicans in the new Biden administration are not going to want to work with Democrats, because I have a feeling that there'll be some holdovers into the new Biden administration of Republicans who were elected when Trump was defeated that still want the election result overturned. That being said, whether this bill passes or not, Congress does have the votes to override it, so you might be getting your $600. But the problem is we have dangled $2,000 a month, not a month. I'm going to get to that in a second. We've dangled $2,000 payments to the American people, and comparing $600 to $2,000, why should the American people have to compromise, right? So ultimately, the Biden administration is going to have to figure out what additional aid packages look like. My suggestion is a little bit different than what most are talking about, but I think that it is worthy of consideration. So I do want to get into some details of, first of all, what the president said. And I think he said what he said, trying to all of a sudden upend the work that Congress did, even if you don't think it was good work. There was a lot of other spending proposals in this bill. So it wasn't just giving money to the American people who have been shuttered by the coronavirus. It was to keep the government going and to honor commitments that we make to foreign countries, which made a lot of people upset. We give money to foreign countries all the time. That's not new. That's a part of the federal budget. But we don't, it's not like the money would be yours if we didn't give it to Egypt or to Ukraine. It's not like that money is just available for the American people. It's earmarked to help our friends and allies in foreign countries fight battles that we don't want to fight, because it's cheaper for us to give them resources for them to fight some of those battles than it is for us to send the American military. That's one part of it. But the other thing is we dangle money in front of foreign countries that are bad actors, that have gross human rights violations. So what we'll do is we'll say, hey, Egypt, we have $1.3 billion for you, but here's what you need to do to get it. You got to be more fair, more equitable, more just. You got to treat people differently. And we're not going to give you any part of this money until you meet these particular benchmarks. Another reason why we give foreign countries money is just for clout, to get them to be more sympathetic to America, to our values, to our way of life. Should we be doing it? I don't know, but it's something that we've always done. And so when people hear about all this foreign aid and this omnibus spending package, the whole bill is not just to give the American people money. The whole bill is to fund the government, including commitments that were made earlier in Congress or by previous congressional resolutions. It's just funding those things that we had already said we were going to do. There's a church in Minnesota, and I posted an article. It's some small town in Minnesota that I literally have never heard of before, and most of you probably haven't either. But they have this particular church has got a philosophy where they want to be whites only, and they're citing some really weird. I think it's somewhat Christian religion, but it sounds kind of paganistic to me. Maybe it is pagan, and they want to be true to the founding of the church, and it's from some Swedish Norwegian country, a place where a bunch of white people are from, right? And this church wants to mimic the original, makeup of its founders, and they're all white people. And so part of this church's doctrine is that it's whites only. In a town in which I don't believe there are any African Americans, but there's other people that are qualified as non-white. I think there's Latinos and Hispanics in this particular town, an influx of them in the last several years because of job opportunities. But I guess my ultimate question is, do we care? Like we're any let's say there is an African American population in this town of Murdock, Minnesota. Let's just say there is. Or a Latino population, which we know there is. Would they be going to that church anyway? Church and Sundays are still the most segregated day in the United States of America. There are white churches just outside of the city of Milwaukee and all throughout Milwaukee County. And they may be the same denomination. Like there's Baptist and Episcopalian and Methodist churches all over the place. But in the neighborhoods in which those churches reside, they make up the racial, demographics of the community that they're in. And so if there's a church that Black people want to have where there's no influence in this particular church for these hours in which this church is open, where we just don't want white people for whatever the reason, we don't want them there because we're plotting on, I don't know, frauding another election or something. But would people get as angry because we would want to have a Black church, a Black space that is safe from outsiders, and this is where Black people get together and talk about things that affect our community unlike they affect any other community? Would people even get angry about that? But before we jump into these interesting topics, let's call the roll. Tutu Reeves, good morning. Kelly Turner, good morning to you. Cassandra D says, good morning. Loving the energy of the music. Thank you, Cassandra. That is BT Express. This house is smoking because our house really is smoking. The United States is totally on fire. Orvana Harris, good morning to you. Vanessa G, good morning to me and everyone. Blue is a great color on you. Thank you. I have many sweaters. We used to call and I've got a bunch of like colorful, like pattern sweaters. We used to call those Cosby sweaters. Remember when people would call very colorful sweaters Cosby sweaters? I can't even wear my Cosby sweaters anymore because y'all might cancel me. We probably should have a talk about canceled people. You can't watch the Cosby Show anymore. Couldn't you up until recently, watch Cosby Show episodes on Hulu? You can't even watch Bill Cosby episodes. Bill Cosby is in prison. I have to remind myself that Bill Cosby is in prison right now. And then R. Kelly is, wherever R. Kelly is, I think he's still being held in a jail or something without bond or bail. R. Kelly is never getting out. But at some point, I want to know: can we listen to Michael Jackson? We're done with Michael Jackson? Can we listen to those people? Can I find old funny episodes of the Cosby Show before we knew that Bill Cosby was a pretty bad guy? Can we still watch those and laugh? So Bill Cosby, there's more, I'm sure. Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, R. Kelly. Do we just pretend that they never existed? I want to get some of those things figured out because I don't really know how our culture deals with stuff like that. Like, do you admire somebody's art? Do you admire their work? Do you admire their music? Or do they have to be a good person too, right? So if their art, their music, their creativity is stellar, but they're a bad person, does that take away from you enjoying the creative parts of them? I'm so confused by that. I'm gonna tell you right now, if I played an R. Kelly song, y'all would start dancing in your pajamas right now. But I'm not gonna do that Because y'all would try to cancel me. You try to cancel my own YouTube channel. G. Collins, good morning. Tammy Reed, good morning. And Merry Christmas Eve. Eve. Thank you, Tammy. Sarah Laguerre, good morning. Tutu Reeves, LOL. I have many Cosby sweaters. Tutu, don't say that. People will cancel you if they know you got Cosby sweaters. All right, let's go to this little small town of Minnesota. When the church door is open, only white people will be allowed inside. That's the message of the Asatru Folk Assembly in Murdock, Minnesota, is sending after being granted a conditional use permit to open a church there and practice its pre-Christian religion that originated in Northern Europe. Despite a council vote officially approving the permit this month, residents are pushing back against the decision. Before I get into the rest of this, first of all, know what is this religion? The Asatru Folk Assembly. We don't know what that is, okay? So there's a lot of very unusual beliefs in this country. Oh, there's so many. People believe so many things. There's so many different places that people go to worship different things. But that's a part of what America is. We have the freedom of religion because a long time ago, white people didn't like that they couldn't practice like Presbyterianism. They're like, oh no, we need another country. Let's go steal a country from natives and steal their and kill them so we can practice our religion that tells us not to kill people. So we have built into the US Constitution, into our table of contents of this country, you can practice whatever religion you want. And some of them are really weird. And I'm not a religious judger. I don't judge people. I take that back. Sometimes I do judge people a little bit on their religions because sometimes they're called cults. But constitutionally, you can practice a lot of different things in this country with very little repercussion unless you're hurting people, right? And the question ultimately is, in some of these religions, in which there's hardly any members anyway, right? They're really specific and, they have unusual and very unorthodox beliefs that come from, the land before time, and none of it makes any sense in a modern era. None of it is transferable or relatable. If they just want to be to themselves and they say, or maybe it's the fact that they said whites only. Is that what made us upset? Because black people are not going to, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Here, let me see. I can do things here. Sometimes I forget I can do things. So we're going to find out where this little town is. Murdock, Minnesota. Let's see where it is. Oh, hell no. What is this? Oh, please. Let me see. I'm going to pull the map up and then I'm going to show you guys. It's really, really small. Okay. Okay. You guys calm down. I'm about to click something here. And go like this here. And go like that. And go like this. Okay. There you go. Hey, look at this. Look at the whites only. Look at Murdock, Minnesota. This is it. We're just going down the main street. What's this? Oh, there's a car. Look, these are silos. Huh. And they want to have a whites only church here. Boy, oh boy, is that offensive. I can't believe that they would not let us black people go to a church here where the first vehicle I see is a pickup truck. Unbelievable. Who cares? We get bent out of shape over the wrong things. Hold on, let me see if we can. I don't need all these other extra things. All right, so here's Murdock right here. It doesn't have the church, but look how small the town is. This is the town. It's just, I can count the number of blocks in the town. They want to have a whites only church. Let's see. Where is it? So there's Murdock. You see where that is? Right in the middle. Zoom out, zoom out. God, I don't even know where in Minnesota we are yet. Lord have mercy. What is this? I lost it. Where is it? It's gone. Hold on. Let me find it again. I lost the damn town. Where the hell is this town at? It does. It's. I lost it in the map of Minnesota. That's how small the town is. I can't find it. Do y'all see it? Now I gotta search for the damn town again. Murdock, Minnesota. Okay, we know. Where is it on the map? It's gone. So Murdock, Minnesota. I thought it was a town. All of a sudden, it disappeared off the map, so it doesn't even exist. Are we really upset that they want to have a whites-only church? Or do we just want to find things to get outraged about? Despite a council vote officially approving the permit this month, residents are pushing back against the decision. Opponents have collected about 50,000 signatures on an online petition to stop the all-white church from making its home in the farming town of 280 people. Wait a minute. So they got 50,000 signatures? Those people probably don't even live in Minnesota. So does that even make any sense? And that's not even democracy. If you get people from Florida and West Virginia and North Dakota and Washington State and Oregon and Nevada to sign a petition to tell people in a town of 280 in Minnesota that they can't have a whites-only church. And look, I get it. That's reminding us of a very ugly history in this country that we had to fight very, very hard for many, many years to overturn that kind of Jim Crow. And it's very offensive that some people in this country would want to relive that. It's unfair. But I would ask you, are African Americans or any other people or race of diversity and culture trying to go to Murdock, Minnesota, a town of 280 people? When I pulled up the map, the first vehicle we saw was a pickup truck. I lost it on the map. I tried to remember when I pulled the map up. I hope you guys saw the map that I pulled up because I could see it. And then we found it. And then I zoomed the map out to try and see where it was in relation to, St. Cloud or Albert Lee or Minneapolis, St. Paul. And it just disappeared off the map. It's so small. I bet you there are other communities that probably do have whites-only institutions, but they didn't apply for that designation on a permit. Because I don't know if we're in a position right now, especially with the coronavirus raging the way it is, to be incredibly outraged that a town of 280, probably mostly white people, want to have a church where just the people in the town who are mostly white are going to attend. And everybody in the town is not going to go to that church. It's probably like 7 members. Probably all it is. We'll go back to the chat boxes and see what y'all are saying. Tammy Reed says, you can't get canceled for wearing a sweater. I have to eventually show my daughter The Cosby Show. There are so many references to it from my childhood. So I don't even know where you can find Cosby shows anymore. Do you buy the DVD box set? What would y'all do if somebody gave you a DVD box set to The Cosby Show episodes? I mean, I'd watch them. I don't have a DVD player anymore. But there's an episode where Bill is he's having a cookout. And I think Sandra... was Sandra married to Alvin? Who was Denise married? What didn't Denise marry Lenny Kravitz or something on the Cosby Show? Anyway, everybody's there and they're having a cookout in the backyard. And Bill is joking about his secret barbecue sauce. Some of y'all have seen this episode or you will remember it. But his secret barbecue sauce makes people horny. And this was an episode from the probably late 80s, early 90s, probably mid 80s. It was a really old one. No, probably late 80s because the older kids were married. And he said, be careful with the sauce because it'll make you, and he makes the Bill Cosby face, doll. He makes the sound effects that he makes. It'll make you feel kind of frisky if you eat the barbecue sauce, doll. And then he says he keeps a dish of the barbecue sauce next to the bed. You guys know what I'm talking about? So he was like, and that was at the time he was drugging women. He had an episode that I'm sure he wrote about this barbecue sauce. And like the kids are there, like Rudy and Theo and Vanessa. And they're serving this barbecue sauce that makes people horny. And he keeps a little bit by the on the nightstand, which is crazy. Michael Cunningham, good morning. Kind of late, but I'm here. Thank you for joining us, Michael Cunningham. P. Dub Lil City. They worship the Norse gods Zeus in them. Okay. I don't. I saw how people were reacting to it. People got really angry at that. Because I posted the article just because I found it interesting. Not that this needs to be the next site of a Frank Nitti protest. Would y'all please tell Frank Nitti not to march to Murdock, Minnesota? Because I swear to God, he probably would. We don't need to do that. If a small insulated community in interior Minnesota, a town of 280 people, and I have a almost like a libertarian view on these things. I live in Milwaukee. There's a lot of stuff we need to figure out here. A lot. We don't even know how to select a police chief. That's why we have two. And then we have two more that also want to be chief, but they haven't been selected yet because the body that we use to select the chief has trouble selecting a chief. And that's just one example. I may not like what other towns do. I guarantee you there's other towns in this country because America's just, we've totally lost our way. But then I would say, when do we ever have our way? There are a bunch of towns that have ordinance, like really weird ordinances. If you ever look up like strange laws that are still on the books, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Because a lot of these things, even though they're still technically legal, and time has kind of left some of these old antiquated ordinances and laws alone because we have moved so far past them just in our understanding of everything. Some of these laws are still on the books. And I probably would disagree with an awful lot of them. But if they are not affecting me and the municipality in which I live, then let's be a little bit more focused with our outrage. Denise Jones, good morning. Douglas Dickerson, good morning, sir. Denise Jones, what's the demographics of this town? Oh, Denise, I'm so glad you asked me because now I get to look stuff up. Okay. Demo. Right. I know how to spell. Of Murdock, Minnesota. I swear the most valuable thing that I learned, I found something. But I think the most valuable thing that I learned in high school was how to type. Because typing is something I've used like every day since I was a freshman. The racial makeup, is this the right soda? Right soda. Right city in Minnesota? Swift County, State, Minnesota, Murdock, Minnesota. Here it is. The racial makeup of the city was 95.05% white, 0.66% African American, 3.96 from other races, and 0.33 from two or more races. I could probably do the math on this in my head. So it's 90, so there's 280 people. And if it's 0.66% African American, so that would be 6.6 African Americans per 1,000 people, right? Because per 100, no, it would be 6 African Americans per 10,000. There's like two black people in this town, and they ain't going to that church. In fact, they're probably lost because they thought they were somewhere else, and they ended up being in Murdock, and they just stopped there to rest. I'm not gonna get my damn calculator. Y'all driving me nuts. I swear to God. Let's see. Calculator. So that would be, so you got 280 people, okay, times 0.66. No, that's not right. How would I do the math on that? Let's say 280, 0.6, carry the 5. Let's see. Oh, so maybe divided by 280, so the 0.66. divided by 280. No. 0.66 divided by 280. That number is so small, I can't even read it. There's not many black people there. Denise Jones said, hell no, we are not upset. Have at it. Vanessa G says, right, Denise Jones? Cantrell Barron, TV One, 7 a.m. They're on the air. Cosby Show, Monday through Friday. Is that right? That's got to be the only place you can see it. 8 a.m., he says. Anthony Escondel, it's a Twista sweater. Twista like the rapper? A Coogee sweater. Notorious Big used to wear Coogee sweaters. Okay, can we be done with our selective outrage about Murdock? Quote, I think they thought they could fly under the radar in this small town like this, but we like to keep the pressure on them, said Peter Kennedy, a longtime Murdock resident. Racism is not welcome here. Many locals said they support the growing population of Latinos who have moved to the area in the past decade because of job opportunities over the church. So when is this census from? I really want to know what 0.66 of 280 is, but for some reason I can't figure it out. So 1% of 280 would be 2.8. That's 1%. So if we cut that in half, that would be 1.4. That would be 0.5%. So there's 1.5 black people in the town of Murdock, and they want to have, but there's Latinos as well. So maybe, and then you have a few more Latinos. How many Latinos are there? African Americans, 0.66. 2 more. Hispanic or Latino of any race were 8.25%. So, okay, there is like 20 Latinos or Hispanics in the town. There's 1.5 black people, and they have a church that's whites only. Pretty safe bet that the diversity in that town probably will not want to go to that church. But I guess I can understand if you have a law that can ban anything and anyone who is not white, then maybe that expands to the whole county. Maybe that applies to the next county over. I don't know if those kinds of things spread. Bottom line is white people still do it every single day. And I also believe that if black people wanted something very separate, we wouldn't need an ordinance, right? If something was promoted as being a black institution or a place or a dwelling, and we have them all throughout our community where we don't have to say specifically no whites are allowed, but because of where it's located, some white people just won't go. They just won't go. So maybe you just don't need the ordinance to enforce such things. Okay, why don't we do this? Let's talk about the coronavirus relief bill. And so what I want to do is I want to let you hear your glorious and gracious president, because I bet some of you probably voted for him. I mean, you're not going to tell us, but I'll bet you did. Let's listen.
The bill also allows stimulus checks for the family members of illegal aliens, allowing them to get up to $1,800 each. This is far more than the Americans are given. Despite all of this wasteful spending and much more, the $900 billion package provides hardworking taxpayers with only $600 each in relief payments. And not enough money is given to small businesses, and in particular restaurants, whose owners have suffered so grievously. They were only given a deduction for others to use in business their restaurant for 2 years. This 2-year period must be withdrawn, which will allow the owners to obtain financing and get their restaurants back in condition. Congress can terminate it at a much later date, but 2 years is not acceptable. It's not enough. Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests, while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it. It wasn't their fault. It was China's fault, not their fault. I am asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple. I'm also asking Congress to immediately get rid of the wasteful and unnecessary items from this legislation and to send me a suitable bill, or else the next administration will have to deliver a COVID relief package, and maybe that administration will be me, and we will get it done. Thank you very much.
Unbelievable how he had to throw that last part in. How the next administration may be me. So he's right. There are relief dollars to foreign countries, but what I think he's doing here is covertly punishing the Republicans because it was a part of the Republican sentiment, at least before Mitch McConnell got involved. And guys, we got to be honest about this. This has nothing to do with caring about the American people. The Republican Party, as a unit that represents, you know, basically half of American democracy, didn't care if you got a penny, did not care if people were getting evicted, did not care if people were getting their homes foreclosed on. That was not their motivation whatsoever to actually help the American people. Because of the US Senate races in Georgia and the commercials that the Democratic candidates are running, Ossoff and Warnock, I believe were their last names. Because of the commercials that were being run in those US Senate races in Georgia, Mitch McConnell felt it was necessary to address the economic situation that people are going through. This is only to win the Senate races in Georgia. It had nothing to do with actually giving aid to the American people because there's some Republicans, including all the Republicans that represent Wisconsin, our US Senator and our members of Congress, all voted no on this because they think that $600 is too much. And it was widely understood by Republicans that a $600 payment to individuals in this country was too much money. So Trump now saying he wants to give every person $2,000 and then couples $4,000. He is undercutting Republicans that thought that $600 was too much. He is doing this to punish not just you all for not voting for him, Trump is, but also punishing the Republicans who are not loyal enough to him. And I think that they have illustrated and demonstrated their loyalty to such an extent to where it borders on sedition. But for Donald Trump, that's not enough. And the thing is this, it was very difficult to negotiate this bill, which is incredibly watered down as far as the resources that go to actual Americans. But we are 2 days before Christmas. And if you realistically think that Congress is going to come together and put together a whole nother package, because if you revisit paying the American people, and Nancy Pelosi has already put it out there in the universal, she's like, okay, good. I'll agree with the president on this. He wants to do $2,000 per person and $4,000 per couple. I'm all for it. We can pass it in the House with unanimous consent. And Nancy Pelosi can do that. But it's the Republicans in the U.S. Senate, led by Mitch McConnell still, that will not go for this. Because if they begin negotiating higher payments for the American people, then they're going to renegotiate just about everything else in the bill. Because somebody's going to say, hey, can we get more aid for this particular project? We need more aid for small businesses. Hey, can we get a little more money for minority-owned businesses in the Midwest? Hey, can we do some more fossil fuel research? Because there's a category in the omnibus spending bill that addresses those issues too. They will negotiate the entire thing. And so here's what's going to happen. We have two options at this point, and then I have my idea of what I think these kinds of bills need to look like moving into the first 6 months or really the first year of the Biden administration. Because this bill is going to expire. There's only a certain amount of time that we have for action to be taken on this bill, and then the whole thing goes back to zero, right? And we're 2 days before Christmas, and I don't know when our deadline is, but I know it's looming, and I do not expect lawmakers to renegotiate this complicated of a bill 48 hours before Christmas. So one thing can happen is this. They send it to Capitol Hill, or they send it to the White House. The president will veto it. There are enough votes based upon the initial passage in Congress and the U.S. Senate to override the president's veto, meaning that $600 checks could start going out as early as next week. But you're only getting $600. Now, because the president dangled the idea of $2,000, that $600 doesn't feel like much all of a sudden, because now you have a comparative. $2,000 is much more reasonable. And of course, that's not going to be enough for some people as well, but that's dramatic. It's 3 times more than the $600 payment. So they send the bill to the president. He vetoes it because he basically told you he doesn't like it, right? So he can veto it. It goes back to Congress. They override it. You get your $600 checks on schedule. That is one option that we're looking at. Or they send it to the president and he signs it, right? Then he just did a whole bunch of carnival barking, which is possible as well. Or they begin to renegotiate because the House, led by Nancy Pelosi, passes a $2,000 per person increase in the stimulus by unanimous consent. Then the Senate would have to agree to the exact same thing. In that event, it would take too long to negotiate because they wouldn't want to go back to the drawing board because there's other parts of the omnibus spending bill that other lawmakers simply do not like because Iowa gets more than Minnesota and Illinois gets more than Michigan, and Michigan has got more money for their, the automotive, the car makers, and there's going to be a whole bunch of renegotiating. Then this bill will completely expire, leaving it up to the Biden administration to handle aid from this particular package and then moving forward. And because it's going to be incredibly difficult for the Biden administration to work with Republicans on Capitol Hill, this will be as bad, if not worse, than how Obama had it, because the Republicans, just anything that Obama did, his last term especially, they just wouldn't vote for anything. They wouldn't support anything. Obama was the biggest lame duck almost his last 4 years because he didn't have the power of Democratic control of all the federal government. Republicans just thumbs down everything. They're going to be this bad for Joe Biden. Now, when they did it with Barack Obama, we just assumed because those Republicans were racist and because Barack Obama was black. The Republicans' excuse now to be against everything that Joe Biden proposes, even if it's for the betterment of the American people and moving the economy forward, they're going to say, because Biden, you're not the real president. There's going to be some Republicans in the House that will never vote for anything agreed on by the Democrats in the House, who still will have the majority, and agreed upon by the Biden administration and agreed upon by the American people. There will be a cohort of Republicans that will never vote for any of that because they will not see Joe Biden as a legitimate president. Isn't it amazing how ironic and how full circle we have come? Because some of them didn't believe that Barack Obama was a legitimate president. Remember how they tried to discredit him every single day? That he was a racist because he went to Reverend Wright's church, or he was a Muslim, or he was Kenyan, or because he bowed down to dictators. I think there was some head of state of some foreign country that Barack Obama did the customary greeting to this particular leader, and people said, "Oh, Barack Obama's weak because American presidents don't bow," or whatever he did to these foreign leaders. And they were always looking at ways to discredit him. So they had a reason to not support his legislation, which ultimately was legislation that would have helped the American people. They're going to do the exact same thing to Joe Biden. And I just don't know how our democracy can survive all of this. So my suggestion would be this, and it's going to be an impossibility. Denise Jones says that makes about 1.32 black people. Sounds about right. Murdock, Minnesota. The American people are going to need economic assistance for the duration of the year 2021. And 2021 hasn't even started yet, but I already know it's going to take time for businesses to rebound, for consumer confidence to spring back up. And it all comes down to whether people get inoculated or not. That is the root of how much and how long we're going to need economic aid from the federal government. There's only one thing the federal government can do very, very well, as we can see: give out money, whether it be to us or whether it be to foreign countries. That's what they do. They make some high level decisions, like they decide on, military spending, and they suggest categories in which we should spend this money. But the best thing that they do, the thing they know how to do best, is to give money to states so states can implement, whether it's coronavirus, vaccine distribution, whether it's helping to fund educational initiatives, whatever the case may be, funding the Department of the Interior and national parks. The federal government just gives money away. That's what it does. It needs to just stay in that lane. But because we don't know how many people are going to ultimately get vaccinated. So we're going to be in the coronavirus woods for the duration of 2021. Things will naturally start to open back up, or people will just get frustrated and open things up anyway. But there's going to be a need for economic assistance for the American people for the entire year. No question about that. And so, what the next spending bill needs to look like, and again, this is if government was an actual function of the needs of the people, which it is not. It is a function of a partisanship that teeters on a dictatorship. So it's not about your needs. It's about how do these diametrically opposed political parties coexist when one party thinks the other party is illegitimate and vice versa. Because the Democrats and the Republicans are not going to be able to agree on anything, it's going to be worse in 2021 and beyond, especially moving into the midterm elections, because the Republicans know that if they just hold out and don't show any progress with the Joe Biden administration, because Joe Biden can't stack up any wins. If he gets political victories and legislative victories, then Democrats are going to use that to run on in 2022. The Republicans are not going to give the Democrats an inch. They're not going to give any credit or any opportunity for the Biden administration to look like it's even reasonably successful. You got to keep that in mind, right? So that's going to be behind a lot of the thinking behind all of what the Republicans are going to do. Don't give Democrats and the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi any accomplishments that they can run on in the midterm elections of 2022, because the midterm elections are going to be, could be incredibly successful for the Republicans. So they're not willing to work with the Democrats. But what an aid bill should look like is just you pass another bill. And it's not going to be now because we're 2 days from Christmas and this year is essentially over. Assuming we get a Democratic majority in the U.S. Senate, we have a majority in the House. The next bill should be a specified amount of money, and maybe it's a smaller amount. Maybe it's $500 per person, $1,000 for a couple, or however we want to do it. But in that bill, that should be a stipend every single month, right? So once that bill passes, we know there's going to be major economic impact on the American economy for the foreseeable future, because we still have not gotten the virus under control to where people can go and pack arenas and pack stadiums and go on vacation and go to Vegas and just really open up their pocketbooks and spend some of this money, because we're a long way off from all of that. We're going to need to inject money constantly into the economy, not $600 here, not at $1,200 and then 7 months later another $600. There has to be a consistent payment to the American people. So it would be $500 per person or $1,000 per couple per month for the whole year. And you negotiate that in one bill. But in a bill where we're not including money for foreign governments, we're not including money for pet projects and construction projects for the FBI, a bill that is clean and is pure and economic stimulus for the American people. One bill, not a bill like that's good for 3 months or just one payment, a single bill in which we can provide a monthly income for the American people for the year 2021, and just negotiate that once, and you pass that bill once and Joe Biden signs. That's the only way that it will work. Because if we do this $600 stimulus, we're going to need another $600 in like 3 weeks. And then we're going to have to go back and negotiate with the Republicans again. Now, a lot of this is contingent upon whether the Democrats get control of the U.S. Senate, which I can't tell you. I mean, I think that Georgia did the almost unthinkable by becoming a blue state, which is important, but that's a lot different than electing 2 Democratic federal legislators. It's a lot different. Apparently, the Democrats in Georgia, I think the race has gone well over $400 million. It's going to be one of the most expensive U.S. Senate races in history. But look what it's for, right? The difference between the Democrats winning those seats in Georgia and not is money for you. And you don't even have to live in Georgia, because it will be much easier. to get a spending bill, a standalone clean bill that just says, here's what we're going to do for the American people for the calendar year of 2021. And then we can start worrying about fixing other parts of the economy and also worrying about repairing our relationships that Donald Trump has completely destroyed. If we can have a single bill that gives the American people a stipend for the rest of the year, then we don't have to argue and bicker over that anymore, because I think that's going to take up a lot of the time that we have to begin to get everything else back on track, because I don't even think we know the full amount of damage that Donald Trump has done to this country. And that's going to take some serious political effort. But at the same time, the American people are going to continue to suffer. That's my suggestion. I doubt it's going to go anywhere. I had a story here. Well, I still have it. There's a lot of foreign aid money in this bill, but again, it's an omnibus spending bill. And I think that when people saw, and then the president made reference to it in his Twitter rant, that video that he filmed, like a made for Twitter movie he filmed, very unusual. Like it didn't air on primetime or on the networks. He just recorded a video and put it on, and he tweeted it out. People heard all of the dollar amounts that are going to foreign countries and other projects. And people might have thought that, well, that money should go to us because we're here in America. We're struggling. Why are we giving all of these dollars to these other countries? This one appears in Newsweek. The $900 billion coronavirus stimulus bill agreed by lawmakers has sparked fury among American voters and lawmakers, with warnings that the $600 per person payments ordered by the legislation is inadequate and comes too late to help many Americans whose lives have been upturned by the pandemic. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday, he added his voice on Tuesday to the bipartisan criticism of the, quote, ridiculously low sum, and demanded lawmakers increase the payments to $2,000 per person. Lawmakers also approved a larger $1.4 trillion omnibus spending package consisting of 12 separate bills to fund the government during the fiscal year 2021. This was not a part of the coronavirus stimulus package, but did include a raft of foreign aid payments that critics are now arguing should be scrapped to fund the more generous coronavirus checks for Americans. That is what would make this whole thing so difficult, because if the Democrats in the House, led by Nancy Pelosi, said by unanimous consent, we're going to move forward with $2,000 for the American people, $4,000 per couple, then they would want to negotiate, and some Republicans would as well, some of the foreign aid that's in this bill. In fact, some of that foreign aid might get reduced. And that's going to take a whole nother heap of political muscle to do so, because some of these foreign countries have lobbyists in this country lobbying for their countries to get American tax dollars. This is a sensitive area for voters and lawmakers. Though foreign aid typically makes up around 1% of the entire federal budget, public perception is that the U.S. gives out far more. Polling suggests Americans believe the country spends up to a third of its entire budget on foreign aid. Scrapping foreign aid alone would free up a relatively small amount in the federal budget. Still, Trump singled out these measures. Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests, while sending a bare minimum to the American people who need it. But like, you guys know that this is not about Donald Trump all of a sudden caring about you after he lost the election, right? And I heard some people like, oh, finally, Trump is coming around. Finally, I agree with Donald Trump. When I hear that, I think that's what compelled me to talk about this topic. When people are saying, oh, Trump is being nice, or I agree with him on this, like, oh, that's great that Trump is finally, wanting to give the American people more money for our economic troubles. Y'all fell for Trumpism. Do you know that he could have promoted this amount months ago when these talks were beginning, but only after he lost the election and after this bill is essentially set in stone to where it was negotiated painstakingly at $600? That's not enough, but that's what they came up with. And now all of a sudden, after he lost the election, is about to vacate the White House, now he cares about the American people, the same American people that he hated because enough of y'all didn't vote for him. Don't fall for that. Please don't all of a sudden have this level of sympathy for Donald Trump. It's like, maybe we should consider his proposal. It is the biggest lie he has told. Maybe not. The biggest lie Donald Trump has told was him taking the oath of office. Like, that was when he put his hand on the Bible, probably the biggest lie any person, any man has ever told in the history of this nation, because he broke it immediately. It would be wrong to frame foreign aid as free money for countries included or charity on part of the U.S. The government uses aid as leverage to coerce nations into better behavior on issues like human rights or simply to align themselves closer to American policy. Where are these dollar amounts? Oh, here we go. Egypt, which is in line for $1.3 billion of aid in the stimulus bill, is a good example. The country has long been a U.S. ally and a significant customer for American arms. Leverage Washington, D.C. has used to secure Cairo's cooperation on security issues with Israel. Indeed, the bill says this money will be released if Egypt is shown to be, quote, sustaining the strategic relationship with the United States and maintaining its peace with Israel. So we're bribing them with our money. Hey, Egypt, we got a cool 1.3 billion for you if you just do better. The $1.3 billion set aside for Egypt is mostly military aid and has several other conditions attached to it. The bill allows for $40 million for higher education programs, of which $15 million will cover scholarships for Egyptian students needing financial aid to attend not-for-profit higher education institutions in Egypt. We probably could skip that. What else? But the political establishment in the United States remains committed to its alliance with Israel. Of the $50 million that has been earmarked for Israel, short-range ballistic missile spending with American firms. Another $77 million is for Israel to spend with American firms on the Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile. Elsewhere, the bill provides for support for, quote, necessary expenses of the Israeli Arab Scholarship Program, which funds Israeli Arabs attending higher education institutions in the United States. The omnibus also includes $5 million to support the settlement of refugees in Israel. So this is just a fraction of some of the stuff that's in the bill. Palestinian authorities will get $250 million in economic aid spread over 5 years, assuming it remains committed to peaceful coexistence with Israel, bribing the Palestinians to be nice with Israel. Totally not going to work, but worth a shot, I guess. $250 million in economic aid spread over 5 years, assuming Palestine remains committed to peaceful existence, coexistence with Israel, takes counterterrorism measures within its territories, and works towards Middle East peace. Other headline beneficiaries include Sudan, which weeks after being removed from the state sponsors of terrorism list, has been awarded $700 million in funds, though with stipulations that the country works toward democracy, improves its human rights situation, and that any new projects funded must be approved by congressional committees. Ukraine, Nepal, Burma, Cambodia, and Pakistan are all among those in line for hundreds of millions of American aid. In each, the money is designed to promote democratic values and human rights and tie the national governments closer to American foreign policy. I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like us giving ultimately billions of dollars to nations to promote democratic values and tie the national governments closer to American foreign policy. So basically, a substantial piece of our foreign policy is paying nations to be nicer and be more like us. The $453 million earmarked for Ukraine is to support the country in its ongoing war against Russian-backed separatists in the east of the country. Military support accounts for $275 million of the total, including lethal assistance, i.e. American weapons. The funding excludes the Azov Battalion, a powerful far-right paramilitary group in Ukraine that became influential after the 2014 revolution. The country of Nepal will get $130 million of YO money to support its development and democracy efforts. Caught between India and China, Nepal has significant strategic value and is a key target of economic and diplomatic influence from Beijing. Another $6 million is set aside to protect Tibetan culture and language development. I'm trying not to be judgmental, but it seems like we have other priorities in this country. I clearly am wrong, but $6 million set aside to protect Tibetan culture and language development among Tibetan refugee communities in Nepal and India. This issue remains a source of tension between the US and China, which has sought to scrub Tibetan culture and separatist settlement. The bill also pushes back on Chinese encroachment in Hong Kong, providing $3 million for democracy and internet freedom, and to provide legal and other support for democracy activists in Hong Kong. Burma's $135 million will help, quote, promote ethnic and religious tolerance. Hell, we need that money here. $135 million to Burma to promote ethnic and religious tolerance and mitigate the ethnic cleansing against Rohingya Muslim minority groups there. The money will help sustain ceasefire agreements and further prospects for reconciliation and peace. Maybe if we gave 78 million to the people of Murdock, Minnesota, they would scrap their whites only church, because clearly we just pay countries to stop doing bad stuff. Pakistan will receive $15 million for, quote, I don't know why they put this in quotes, for democracy programs like wink, wink, and at least $10 million for gender programs, something that has prompted derision among foreign aid critics. Senator Lindsey Graham defended this. He defended it. He defended this measure specifically, telling Fox News yesterday, if you're a girl in Pakistan, life is pretty tough. If you're a girl in America, life is also pretty tough. Pakistan is among the countries where the bill will support the recruitment, training, and retention of women in the judiciary, police, and other security forces, and train judicial and security personnel in such countries to prevent and address gender-based violence, human trafficking, and other practices that disproportionately harm women and girls. Totally something we need to do here. And I'm assuming we are doing these same things here, but it's weird that these resources found a home in this particular bill at this time. Cambodia, meanwhile, will get $85 million, assuming it pushes back on expanding Chinese influence and claims in the South China Sea, and supports international sanctions on North Korea. Another $506 million, $500 million, will go to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama as a part of the Central America Regional Security Initiative. And I'm just scratching the surface of some of the foreign aid that's going to go into the omnibus spending bill, where when it's all said and done, the American people are getting $600. If that bill goes to the president and he vetoes it, there are enough votes in the House and the Senate to override that veto, and checks could still go out on schedule, meaning the first people would get their checks sometime next week. Or if Donald Trump's proposal does pick up some kind of steam, it very well has already with the House of Representatives, with Nancy Pelosi saying, oh, she's totally all for giving individuals $2,000 each and then couples $4,000. Don't know if that's going to fly in the Republican-controlled U.S. Senate. My idea is have a standalone bill, a clean bill that just addresses the economic aid needed for the American people, a monthly stipend for 12 months in the year 2021, so that people have a reliable source of income coming every single month for the duration of the year 2021, because it's still going to be very hard on a lot of us economically. I guess that about covers it. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and I think I'm going to sleep in tomorrow. So I'll see you guys on Monday, right? And we can start doing our year in review, which is going to be an awful lot to cover. You guys have yourselves a fabulous holiday. I hope Santa Claus, or whatever clause you believe in, brings you many, many things. But because this is America, if somebody slides down your chimney, you'll probably shoot them. Anyways, have a great Christmas, everybody, and I'll see you on Monday.